All right, guys, we are live. This is awesome. Welcome. This is the Money Talk Show with Dane, where we talk about all sorts of interesting topics having to do with money. So if you like those types of things, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the channel, all that type of stuff. We've got some incredible guests. In fact, we've got a cool announcement. Let me start with the announcement, and I'll let you guys go ahead and intro yourselves. Oh, let me close my YouTube. Okay, we're good. Corey and I are working together on some really cool stuff. So Corey and I are going to be streaming once a week, every single week. So make sure that you schedule in your calendars. It's going to be Fridays every single week, usually a little bit earlier than this. We've got some other cool projects and things that we're working on. We'll talk about those probably a little bit later, Corey. But I just wanted to announce that we're doing this weekly. So if you want to talk real estate, if you want to talk crypto, this is the freaking place to do it. I promise you won't find a better place to do it. And this won't be a freaking 5-hour stream where you just get lost along the way like you see some of these other guys. I think there's a really different spin on the markets and what's going on that we bring to the crypto space with our real estate background. And in fact, that's one of the really cool reasons that we wanted to have Maxim on today, because he kind of has a similar background. So we'll talk about some of those things. But Corey, go ahead and introduce yourself, then we'll move to Maxim, and then we'll jump into some different questions.
Absolutely. Thanks, brother. It's a Corey Geary with Crypto Millionaires. It's going to be the YouTube that I'll be broadcasting from all the time. And basically, kind of like you said, man, I'm on the same kind of journey you're on. We've had some, great success with real estate. It's been an absolute blessing in my life and in your life. It's actually changed my whole life. I tell everyone real estate saved my life. It really did, because I went from being a complete, lost in life, drifting through life, alcoholic, to now, being sober for years and family. And it completely turned me around because I got in the real estate chasing that dollar. And it's just done so many amazing things. I've met people like you who've on the same journey of growing. But in that growth, we discovered crypto, and I really want to be able to educate the real estate space with the other opportunities that are out there. There's not just real estate and stocks, and crypto, I feel like, is one of the most wealth-changing opportunities that we have on the table, especially as we approach the next bull run. We don't know when that would be. It might be a while from now, but we want to prepare and learn while we're in this bear market time. And I think what a better opportunity. So I just want to create content and show what I'm doing in the space, and see if people want to join along and kind of, see what's going on with it. I want to network with like-minded people and people who know more about the space than I do. And that's another reason why I'm so blessed to have Maxim on today, because he's been in the space a little longer than us, and I would love to hear his story and what he's got going on. He just drops knowledge. Guys, make sure you subscribe to this man's YouTube. It is fire. And so I'll let that go to you, Maxim. Kind of,
Thank you, Corey. I feel, we do have a little bit of a similar background. Besides, my day job, I did get into real estate. I started in real estate, bought my first property in 2013, and it was a rental. So the rental route's the way that I went there. And for me, there was a point where I felt I was kind of like catching on to the narrative of cryptocurrency, and I wanted to be careful. You can look at yourself and blame things around you for why things aren't working out, or you can look at what you can control. And one of the things I think people can control is deciding what job they have. What do you go to school for? Is it actually going to give you income? Does the income matter to you? Maybe that's a good thing to consider, what your occupation is. But also, if you have savings, like, what's the best way to save that and make it work for you? And real estate for me worked out better than I expected. When I first started, I really had no idea, and I'm so thankful that I went ahead and tried to actually do something for myself. But crypto for me was also, it's kind of the same question of out of the possibilities out there, what are the ones that have the best chance of a good return? Which ones am I most interested in and able to put the extra effort and focus in to have a better chance of a good outcome? And I was getting hooked on the narrative of cryptocurrency. At first, I wanted to just learn to trade. And so I was totally a trader. I was trading Bitcoin, and I really didn't even care too much what Bitcoin was. I saw the massive volatility and I wanted to capitalize on that. But over time, the idea of like kind of almost the philosophy of decentralized finance specifically, but decentralized things in general really started to appeal to me a lot. And I have a natural draw to philosophy anyway. And I was seeing like, wow, there's a way to potentially make money with this and learn from it in an area that I care a lot about, and the underlying principles that some of these tokens are operating on is exactly what I care about anyway. So it was this really cool um idea that I could be a part of. And yeah, I first got my first Bitcoin in 2015, and then early 2017 is where I really had my mental shift of I don't really want to trade so much anymore. I want to pay more attention to what these tokens are about, and kind of be a little bit more of a holder. And uh, and I also just wanted to watch and learn, because I could see that these tokens sound good, but in reality, with human nature and all the individuals using the system to their own benefits, which ones actually in the long run stay decentralized and stay true to the values that they're promoting. And even just the experience of learning, why do certain ones do well, tokens do well, and why do some not do well, is actually really fascinating to me. And I think we're going to probably talk about the Richard Hart ecosystem a little bit here, but um uh started watching
Talk to us
Richard
about how
Hart.
you ended up in the Richard Hart ecosystem. I think that's
Yeah.
probably a good segue.
So I'm really jealous for original thinkers. It's pretty easy to just follow the popular channels, and there's not often much depth I find in those. And so I really appreciate trying to look at things from, as much of a first principle mindset as possible. And so looking at people that are starting from a foundation, working up towards the end themselves, help me create good explanations myself, I feel, and it gives me an advantage, or at least that's what I'm jealous for, because I think if I can understand it, I will have an advantage. I don't want to be just following whatever someone else does. I want to be able to have good explanations myself. And Richard Hart, he seemed like a thought leader. He was approaching things from a little bit different mindset than other people. So I was following him before Hex, and when he started talking about creating his own token, that was really interesting, because it's like, well, this guy appears to have some wisdom and some understanding of this ecosystem. Well, I'm really, really interested. What is he going to come up with? I loved that he came up with a relatively original idea. And one of the problems for me was the fact that it was original in some ways. Like he was kind of a little bit copying from some other things, but putting it together in a way that it had really never been done before. And so it was hard for me to know confidently, will this work? And so I was listening to lots of other pundits talk about Hex, how terrible it was, and I was trying to listen to what they were saying. Like, is there truth in this Hex token being something terrible? And for the most part, I felt like their arguments were emotional. Like it wasn't even really an argument; it was kind of a feeling, and it wasn't an actual explanation for why this wouldn't work. So that was a group of people just hated it, and they didn't even talk about it in any kind of explanatory way. It was just a scam, and that really wasn't helpful. It was like, well, great, cool, you don't like it, but I can't really use that. And then there were other people that tried to create actual explanations for why it wouldn't work, but for the most part, I felt they did not understand what Hex actually was. So their presuppositions, what they're basing their reasons for Hex not being a good thing on, to me were objectively false. And and so I was looking at it for myself, like, I can't see why this won't work. It may not work. Yes, Richard Hart, one of the big things for me was it's possible that Richard Hart pulls the plug on it or just does something terrible, because he appeared to have a lot of power in the system. But so that was really the biggest risk. The
love
OA
that.
address.
Just because you looked at something from your own opinion and didn't follow the herd and what everyone else was saying and doing and telling you on YouTube. And just the fact that you're like, I'm going to cut out the noise and make my own decision on this,
Yes.
on the way I feel, and not let
Yeah.
you control my feelings, is the reason why you are successful in Hex.
Yes.
That is
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah, and to be honest too, part of the reason it's my own development in this process is because I had in 2017 been very foolish and saw people with good track records talking about certain things, and I would invest in, not because I understood exactly what the token was, but I was doing it because someone else said, and they rarely worked out well. And I was like, I recognize this, like I consciously know that's a dumb way to do it, but I still did. And so there's a lot of, definitely more than a handful of tokens I invested in, but I didn't understand what they were. I didn't even have a clear like explanation for, when am I going to get out? Is this a long-term token? Is this just going to be a spike? And it was, there's just so many bad side effects of that. It draws your attention into something you don't even know if you care about. It draws you away from the things you do like and care about. And, if you don't know why you're getting in, you also don't know why you're getting out. You don't know what to pay attention to. And that's one of the things that I really want to do well with at my channel. I want to try to emphasize, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm doing, but do not copy me. Even if I'm right, you won't know when, like, why you're doing what you're doing. You won't know when to get out. You're going to make terrible decisions. I think of it too as like, I want to do my best knowing I'm still learning to teach people how to fish. I don't want to give them it won't work out. It just rarely works out for people just to copy someone else, even if that person is right. And I had that experience too. Just with my local community. I wasn't trying to sell them on ideas, but they're asking me what I was doing, and they would get in without me even telling them to, just because I was. And then I would hear that they sold the bottom and things like that. And I'm like, oh, this hurts.
Right.
And it
even
only
with,
makes,
and let's dig into that idea more, because I love where you're going with it. And I think it's really important. So many of these guys that want to look at things through rose colored glasses. And you even saw a lot of it. I mean, Corey and I got up in the hype of Hex, and frankly, like, we bought a lot of it at or very near the top, because there were so many people that are like, oh, we're going to these certain levels, and it's doubling roughly every like 8 weeks. I'm like, gosh, well, if I put in X number of dollars, I'll have, and so this is what it looks like for almost everybody to get started in crypto. It's the same ways you do. There's some guy on TikTok or YouTube, and they're like, here's the 50 coins. They're like, boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
And then they say at the end, they're like, do your own research. And you're like, well, what does that even mean? Like, if I'm going to do research, what does that even look like? I have five tenets that I feel like are the most important things. Let me tell these 5, and I'd love for you to like either dispute those or add to them or clarify, whatever you think. But when I'm looking for projects, people say, well, how do you do due diligence? Well, I like 5 things. And in my experience, in the few years I've been in crypto, if you find these 5 things in a project, it probably has teeth, because there's very few projects that have all 5 aspects. And Richard Hari ecosystem pretty well checks all of these boxes. So the first is a public founder with a track record, preferably a track record. They don't necessarily need to have a track record, but they're known in the community as track record is good and useful. I want a public founder. The second is I want a cult-like community. Think like early Apple, where they're about the project. They're going to talk to the world about it. They're going to live and die by this project. I want a cult-like community. The third is marketing. I want really strong marketing. That usually takes the form of creating content like this, and it's done by the founder and by the community. You see it with Hex with sponsorships and mailers. There's a lot of marketing that's going on. The fourth is I want strong fundamentals. So with cryptocurrency, almost all projects, there's not a ton of innovation per se. With most crypto projects being open source code, most new ones are just a copy of an old project. It's new marketing, new branding. Maybe they optimize it or change it slightly and they launch it, but it's very similar to oftentimes previous projects. I want to see that if that is the case, I want to see that there's a use case for those previous projects that they've done well. And once again, they're built to go up and to the right. They're built to appreciate, and even better if they produce passive income via staking or mining or different things along the way, all the better. And then the last thing is utility. And in my head, when I'm thinking utility, I'm thinking something like staking or mining or some sort of functionality more than just like everybody in the Telegram chatter on YouTube saying, how high is the price going to go? I want more substance than that. And once again, finding these 5 things in a project, in my experience, and it's far more limited than yours. That's why I'm interested in your feedback. I just can't find it very often.
I think those are really good. And I like the fact that you actually have an explanation. Like, because I think a lot of people, like feelings in people are just really strong. Like feelings, most people say that they follow rationale and that's why they do what they do. In reality, it's usually emotion.
It's all
And
sales.
and that can be really hurtful. I think like one thing that I'm trying to do is before I take action, have myself tell myself, why am I doing this? What is exactly going on? I try to also define the risk. Like what's the % chance that this is going to do well or not? And I really like that approach. The more I've done it, because it forces me to acknowledge that there is risk. It's never 100%.
Have you read
like
the
most
book?
people.
Have you read the book? It's called Thinking in Bets.
I have not.
No, that's an excellent
But
one.
it sounds like a
I
good
might
book.
remember the author here in a second, but it's written by a
Yeah.
professional poker player. And I think
Yes.
about you every time I think about the book now, because I love the way that you think about things and probabilities, because at the
Yes.
end of the day, there are no guarantees. And also
No.
many things just don't go 100% wrong. We end up somewhere in the middle. And if we can hedge probabilities
Yes.
in our benefit
Over time,
then
over time, even though every single action has a % chance of failure, over time, if you're actually playing good games with there was an actual upside, if you're allocating your bets well, over time you will win. And you want to take as many opportunities with a better upside as possible, knowing that any one of those could fail. And I think,
and they will. Some will, and some will do great.
yes,
right.
And another reason I love trying to force myself to give an explanation for why is because if it fails, I want to hold myself as responsible as possible, and I want to be able to look back. Was there something I should have caught? Was there something I can learn from this? What was I actually thinking? If it was just, I feel like I just got to do this and that's it. It's really hard for me to learn. Like one of the things I've learned is not to do that. So try to create a good explanation, just like you did. Here's what I'm looking for. And if those things don't work out for whatever reason, maybe the emphasis on one of those things could be different, or maybe, you can learn from the process so that over time, theoretically, you're getting better and better. And that way you can use those failures to help your future still be better. And I really like that. And I think for me, like taking responsibility is a huge thing. Like if I have recognized the risk and I've decided it's worth it, I really have little regrets. Like I already recognized there was risk, and if that risk, that downside plays out, I've already accounted for it beforehand, and I should have very little regrets. I think most of the regrets come from what is actually really easy to do. It's really easy to lie to myself. It's easier for me to block out a part of my brain. Like, what if this, like that question of what if it doesn't work out is so easy to get tied into. What if it does 1,000x or 100x or 10x, and not what if it doesn't? Like if you can account for that part, you can let the upside just run and take care of itself. The upside's easy. It's the downside that will give pain in the future. At the same time, of course, like it is an individual decision how much risk they want to take. Um, but for me, I've decided I want to take risks because I want to move forward. There's no certainty, and there is even in inaction, that is a decision, and I'm not
Absolutely.
going anywhere with inaction either. And so I want to,
To me, that's
with
the
the
biggest
best.
risk.
Yes, exactly. And there's a lot of I think joy is the word in trying to work for something better. And it's like, I'm going to fight. I can accept failure. Any one of these things can work out, but I'm going to do my best to set myself up to at least learn from it so I'm better next time. I can accept the fact that I'm not perfect. I can accept those downsides, and but taking responsibility really protects me. And the responsibility a lot of times can be facing fear before it. You want to face it before the downside works out, and then you're stressed, or maybe the downside hasn't even quite happened yet, but you can't sleep at night because some part of you did not fully accept that decision was really in your best interest. Like, people are complex. There's different parts to us. We have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind, a rational and emotional, and you really want to take the emotional side, the rational side, the unconscious side as much as possible and be acting within yourself as one towards that end. And I notice responsibility is the word that comes to my mind that helps me be the most secure, and I can sleep at night. And it also helps me make better decisions. I don't go all in very often, and that allows me to take advantage of if that downside plays out. I'm not playing the one game. I can play multiple games, and it's really important. As much as with anything, I think some of these principles play out everywhere in life. This is just one niche, but like even in relationships, like I think of how I asked my wife out the first time. I played the downside. Is this worth it? And it was. But I could accept that. But it's those same life principles apply here. I think with crypto, though, because of the volatility and because of the massive speculative nature, it's as needed as ever, because there is a lot of uncertainty. And if someone isn't taking that responsibility, accepting it, they will have a very emotional, they will eventually have a negative experience that's going to be very painful, because that, like we're experiencing now, we're in a bear market. Things have dropped massively, and it can be as painful as many things. The downside is potentially very real.
Right.
But
And in fact, so everything you're saying is spot on with like how Corey and I approach both real estate and crypto. And I
Yeah,
think
one thing to
especially
add real
talking
quick
about,
is that financial risk threshold is something I'll always preach to my students. Know your financial risk threshold, because your risk is a muscle that you have to flex. And if you're not comfortable flexing that muscle, do it slowly, because flipping a house is similar. You got to know your financial risk threshold before flipping a house. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. They just kind of want to throw you in to add on to that with it.
yeah, no, that was spot on. I'd like to, so I want to see if you guys aren't familiar with Maxim and you're watching this video. He's done a ton of just absolutely killer content on the Hedron and Icosa and Hex protocols. Go and check out all that stuff. I promise you'll be the better for it. I'd like to see your thought process at work. I've watched pretty well. Corey and I both have watched pretty well all of your content, and I feel like you do a good job of showing your thought process. I'd like to see it from beginning to end here. I think that's probably a good thing for all of our audience to see. So let's take Hedron, for instance. Give just, and Hedron can be an absolute rabbit hole. Let's start with just a very basic description of what Hedron is. And then Maxim, I'd love to see your thought process from beginning to end. What are the principles? So I talked about the 5 that are important to me. What are the principles that were important for you to get into it? And then we can jump to probabilities of success versus failure in the protocol. And then we can talk about ownership with that protocol as well. It's probably a good example to be able to see everything we're talking about.
I like this. Put a thought process right on the table.
This is good. I love it. So speaking of Hedron, So I mean, for me, a lot of it is risk to reward, and I'm trying to line those up to what my goals are. And to me, most of this starts with goals, and I could get sidetracked on that very easily. But it's very hard to make individual daily decisions if you don't know what you're working for. And I think it's a lot harder for people, and I say this because it has been for me, to know what the few things are that really matter to you. So that's important. Um, and so for Hedron, I first got into Hedron because it was free. Because I had hex stakes, got in early on the project, got my 10x bonus multiple. So it was there. What's the risk? The contract was a risk. Is Alex or the code gonna steal my hex stake somehow or something like that? And so that was a very important discovery, and I ended up deciding that the risk was worth it. And so I went ahead and claimed, basically. And but then I watched and I was like, this really looks like there's potential problems because it inflates very quickly. But I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna hold my Hedron. Let's just see what happens. And then Icosa came out, and that's when I started posting actual videos. I had an old YouTube channel that was just a big experiment. It still kind of is an experiment, but I was like, I would want my friends to know about this. I don't know that Icosa is going to be the best thing ever, but there's potential opportunity here. I see the Icosa contract addressing a problem that I see with Hedron, and I saw Hedron, aside from inflation, potentially really valuable. I think people would use it potentially almost regardless of the price. You have the ability to, get hex stakes, for example. And I love the fact that I think if Hedron price rises enough relative to hex, you have the ability to borrow on your hex stakes. And there's a bunch of features that I think are actual value adds that there's a chance this system may work out. And so I got really interested when I started realizing what Icosa was, and it was going to address this one main issue that I saw with Hedron, which was the inflation through staking, and then also burning Hedron as the Hedron that is the winning bid for those HSIs, those wrapped hex stakes. That Hedron bid is burned. But I also knew that this was a relatively complex system. I think hex isn't the easiest system to understand. We're building on top of that with many checks and balances that all are supposed to work together. And I still don't want to pretend to know that this system is going to work out, that the checks and balances are going to work. And so I saw and I see Hedron and Icosa as especially speculative, but I still wanted to play the game because I think the upside is really high. And to me, I'm willing to put a small portion of my portfolio in something for the chance of it going to zero if there's this huge potential upside. And that's what I see with Hedron and Icosa. I still kind of feel a little bit similar to I did with Hex. Here's an original idea. I think it's well intended. I think the contracts, it's this relatively well made, and I would like to be a part of this, but I can't find a good reason why it won't work, but I don't pretend to understand everything. And so I kind of want to see it work out, but at the same time, I'm willing to go in early, specifically in Icosa, because I felt like there's going to be more inflation at the beginning. And if I was staked, the dollar in early would have a lot more to show for it than a dollar in later. And I wanted to capitalize on that. Plus I had Hedron anyway. And so it was still risk to reward, and it's been worth it. And I think when Icosa first launched, I was right in my very beginning videos saying, I'm really looking forward to what I'm calling the big HSI days, when all of these wrapped hex stakes are able to be bid on. Let's see how well Icosa parity holds up. Let's see how much Hedron is actually burned. And before I go all in on this or something, I want to actually have it, try to prove itself. So there's a little bit less speculation. And I think right now we are still in that time of seeing how much we're watching how much Hedron is being burned. We're watching to see if HSIs are still coming back in the future to keep that Hedron burned, to keep the yield coming to the pools. And so far, so good. It's a hard time. We're in a bear market, but there's a lot of potential opportunity in bear markets, and I'm still really glad to be a part of the Hex, Hedron, Icosa ecosystems. But I'm still, when it comes to Hedron and Icosa, deciding, is this still going to work? And those are some
So
of my
you
thoughts.
talked about probabilities early on, and
Yeah.
and I need to make sure we qualify all the content here. Like nothing we're talking about is financial advice. I think I think that we've done an excellent job of giving, or the hope of trying to give, general principles that people can follow when making decisions about crypto or life or whatever you want to participate in. So none of this is financial advice that we're talking about. You have to make your own decisions and do your own research. With that being said, what is the probability that you're feeling right now as far as success for Hedron and Icosa? And when I say success, let's quantify that. How would you quantify success for Hedron and Icosa?
Yeah. I do think there's different versions of success. There's like over time, do you end up with more money than you put in? That would be a success. But at the same time, it's also possibly should be relative to the other, like what's the opportunity cost? Could you have put your money somewhere else and it have done better? And I'm pretty drawn to the potential upside. The upside is just so high that and the fact that I can't see as a strong reason why it won't work, it's just worth it to put some of my portfolio in.
I agree.
That's kind of how I'm thinking about it. And it's weird how these things work too, because of the yield and various other aspects. Like I have more of my portfolio in than I originally like allocated, just because it's grown. And I have bought more Hedron since the beginning, and I've bought more Icosa too. But I'm kind of, so if I was to put a number on it, what would I say? Hedron and Icosa, like
And in fact,
what's the
maybe a good way
likelihood?
to quantify it is to say, like, hey, if you were to put Hedron and Icosa in your top, like, I don't know, let's call it your top 5 projects that
Yeah.
you are most excited about. What's the probability that you're feeling right now that A, they're
Yeah.
in your top 5, and B, they continue to be from what you've seen so far?
Yeah, Hedron and Icosa are way up there. So, but I kind of think of it as risk. So, in my opinion, right now, Ethereum seems like the lowest risk token. The fact that it's gone deflation, or if nothing else, it's much less inflationary. It's the number 2 market cap. It has so many tokens related to it. Regardless of if you like Ethereum, you're probably buying it to pay for transaction fees. I think Ethereum to me seems like the most, if you're going to play crypto, this is what I'm telling myself, it's the most secure bet. But the upside is it's really not that bad. But as crypto goes, I think it's going to underperform. I think it's probably going to overperform Bitcoin, but underperform other things. But in my mind, it's the most secure thing I could invest in. And then one of the second is Hex. Hex I like more than Ethereum for me, because it's a combination of less speculation and high upside. Like I think Hex has a lot higher potential upside than Ethereum does. And a lot of that is because it's existed long enough. We've seen there we have a past to see how people have acted, how many stakers we have, when are those stakes coming out. We have a lot of transparency with especially the staking, knowing what's coming in the future, and the number of people talking about this Hex project, the social media people drawing attention to it. Some of them are very intelligent people. It's and the fact that it's original, it's not a copy of something else, it's its own thing. And I'll, there's over time, it's just I'm only appreciating certain aspects more, like the true DeFi nature, the fact that there's really very little centralized finance involved with this token. Really, Hex, I think, should be looking good if you're just at least looking at those metrics. It's separate from those systems. There's very few people, for example, that lost Hex in their FTX in the FTX issue.
Yeah.
It's over here. It's indirectly affected by the markets. I expect, for example, just for what it's worth, when times are good, like I was talking about the Ethereum upside, when times are good, altcoins that survived the bear market tend to overperform. But when times are bad, we're in the bear market, they tend to underperform. It's the tendency. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's just, I feel like, relatively objectively true. That's the tendency of what happens. But at the same time, so if I can find tokens that are underperforming now and are going to perform well in the future, of the tokens that I could choose, Hex seems like a relatively, to me, good bet. It's still speculative. There's no known. I'm just trying to make the best decisions I can. And so in my portfolio, Hex is my biggest allocation of funds. I feel like Hedron and Icosa are even more extreme. They're built on Hex, and if Hex drops, I expect them to drop more. If they survive the drop and they don't completely implode, when things turn around good, I expect them to overperform. That would be the tendency. It's the most likely outcome. It doesn't mean that it will. It's just that it seems, that's, like I said, just in probability, for probability's sake, that's the most likely outcome. But I consider them, like, we have got, Hex is built on Ethereum. Hedron is built on Hex. Icosa is built on Hedron. We have a lot of things. Like Ethereum, there's no given that Ethereum is going to survive. If Ethereum fails, well, Hex might not do so hot. If Hex has a fundamental issue for whatever reason, well, Hedron's not going to do well. If Hedron doesn't do well, then Icosa, and since Hedron is now so related to Icosa in its ability to burn its inflation, if Icosa doesn't do well, if that new contract gets out of whack, then Hedron's not doing well. So it kind of almost gets exponentially more risky as you go down the line. But at the same time, like I said, even just looking at the tendency of tokens, there's a huge potential upside for Hedron and Icosa too.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out. Every time you would talk about more of the risk, there was a lot more potential upside on the back end, and they go perfectly hand in hand. It's funny. It's the same way in our normal life too. In real estate, usually the more risk you take on, the more upside you can get on the back end, and it's even more so. I mean, it's like amplified in crypto, completely amplified.
And the tendency, for what it's worth, I observe, is in good times people are risk on, and the people that had those risky assets look like they're the smartest people ever. But as you go into the bear market, they do terrible. There's a reason they're risky. These are, like, I almost want to say objectively risky. I just want to be careful speaking in absolutes, but they are risky tokens, and there's a reason. Like the bad times will expose that, and those people that looked so good may not look good when the narrative turns. And it's just a common coincidence of risky things. When it's the short time that those risky things are overperforming, everyone jumps in, and then they find out later why they were risky in the first place. And but at the same time, even with crypto, this reminds me of when I'm talking to people that aren't into crypto and they're asking me, why are you in this? What should I do about it? I tell them things like, just consider what you would do, what portion of your portfolio you would give, and watch it go to zero for a 10x potential upside. Like, you can give 1% of your portfolio and potentially have that 1% be 10%. It's risky, but is there a portion that you would do? And then I always talk to them too, this cryptocurrency thing, personally, I don't think is going away. I don't want to pretend to know which tokens are in 10 years from now going to be the ones that are just so great, but I don't think it's going away. So understanding the system has value in itself for me, and learning how to play it is great. But I think of Hedron and Icosa, yes, they're massively speculative, but there is a high upside, and so I'm willing to put a portion of my portfolio in. I just don't want to lie to myself and say that I'm, for example, willing to just go all in and watch my portfolio go to zero if it doesn't work out, because I'm not willing to do that.
And a
but I
little
do feel
diversification is good. You
Yeah,
need
I do.
even the risky assets.
Yeah, I like Richard Hart has talked about how he doesn't like diversification, and I think that's really interesting. I do feel that diversification is at a fundamental level an admittance of ignorance. If I knew what the best thing was, I would go all in.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. And so I'm recognizing my own ignorance and what can I do about it? How can I still win knowing I don't know? That's where diversification to me becomes more valuable. And that's why dollar cost averaging is an admittance of ignorance. I don't know where the top is. I don't know where the bottom is. How can I still win? Well, I can average out, maybe not the whole time, maybe over, I think between on a very long time scale, here and here is probably the top. So I'll start dollar cost averaging now. I think between these really broad areas, this could be the bottom. And so I'll dollar cost average in, but it's an admittance. I don't know. But that's a way that I can have a better chance of winning, knowing I don't actually know. And it's like, yeah, for me, one of the more valuable takeaways for me and lessons I've learned is trying to find out what I don't know and how can I still win anyway. And it's a very powerful thing. And it at least this is from my experience, it's a really like confidence building question, oddly enough. If you can figure out what those things you don't know are, and and then it helps expose too, what are my real fundamental assumptions? And so like for me, for example, with crypto, it's like this DeFi thing specifically, but decentralization aside from finance as well, but I'll just talk to DeFi. I think this is a valuable thing. I don't think we know a better way to solve this problem than this crazy internet money structure. And I don't know which tokens, like I said, are necessarily going to show at the end, but I think some of them are, or at least one of them is. And you can kind of see it takes a system, because you need something like Uniswap. You need the actual tokens to trade. You're going to have different aspects of this thing, being met by different tokens basically. But I don't think this idea is going away, because I think there is value there. And that's kind of a core assumption that I have myself, is that there is actual value here. I do find it extremely hard to quantify the value for what it's worth. To me, it's like, the way I think of it is it's very hard. It's easy to recognize that freedom, for most people, it's easy to recognize that freedom itself has value. It's hard to quantify, like how much dollar value is freedom worth? How much is 10% more freedom worth in dollars? I feel like it's kind of the same way with decentralization, with DeFi. Like, I feel there is actual innate value here. It's just very hard to correlate it well with uncorrelated assets like USD or Ethereum. What is Ethereum worth? Is it worth $400 or $400,000? How do you objectively argue that the market is overvaluing it or undervaluing it? And I find it very hard, but I don't find it hard personally to recognize that there actually is value here. And just because it's magic internet money doesn't mean it's not solving a problem. It is, I think, solving a real problem. And I think over time, it's like, if it is, I think over time it will show. People will be drawn to it, and the supply and demand will show a price. And in the meantime, since it's so hard to quantify, things are very as emotional as ever. And it's because it's harder to find something that's less emotional to compare it to and find comfort in it. It adds to a lot of volatility.
I mean, when you try to quantify value, to me, when you start talking about principles of freedom and sovereignty and removing third party middlemen, that value to me for me is infinite.
Yeah,
I can't put
it's really valuable.
On
exactly
that. Freedom, you can't put a number on freedom. That's why people die for it all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And even
they give the
the
lives.
value of freedom is interesting because it's subjective, dependent upon the person. You know, some people are willing to give up
Very much
freedom
so.
You're right.
for other benefits,
Oh
and that
boy.
And
depends on you.
And
Jeez, very
that's
much
the same thing. It makes me think of the same thing with risk. I feel like the important thing is someone takes responsibility for the risk. I think different people, it's really hard for me to talk to someone and say that this risk is wrong. Like you kind of decide, like use your best explanations to decide how risky it is, and then, accept the potential chance that the downside is there. But if you do, then who's to say that, and I'm not saying to do this, this is the extreme example for a reason. Who's to say that someone shouldn't go all in on Hedron? What I would say is you shouldn't if you can't accept Hedron going to zero.
right.
That you're lying to yourself. That is me looking out for you. Can you really accept that risk? If you can, then like, who's to say you can't? And who's to say that just saving money in your USD, like whatever someone feels is the most secure thing, who's to say that that's wrong either? Different people are different. What I think is the most important is that they're not lying to themselves. And if they're being really conservative and then they beat themselves up because, oh man, I knew about this project and now it's going to the moon. Like, if you can't accept that outcome either, maybe, you should have done something about it, learn from that, do it next time. If you can't handle it going to zero, maybe you shouldn't have put so much in, but just
Double-edged
be
sword.
true to yourself. And
Yep.
really I don't see a real right or wrong. There's wisdom that goes in, but it's not necessarily wrong that some people take on more risks than others, in my opinion.
It's that financial risk threshold also, the muscle. Everyone's got a
Exactly.
different risk muscle. I mean, I had a very low risk muscle when I got into real estate, but now it's very high because of real estate. I've stretched it. I've done so many risky entrepreneurial type stuff and lost. And
Yeah.
I've lost big in some things. And I'm okay with that because I'm okay with starting over and pushing through again,
Yeah.
or learning
Same
from
for
the
me.
mistakes. Like you said, I need to sit down and like, what did I do wrong? What did I miss? How can I learn from this and keep it from happening again? I've done that time and time again in my entrepreneurship journey. And you have to. You have to. If you play the victim role, guess what? You will lose.
You are the victim if you play the victim role.
You are.
Right. Absolutely. And in fact, and you see the same things playing out anytime. I shouldn't say anytime, much of the time that I've had a shorter term time horizon to try to, get a quick flip or see a nice run, or it's shocking to me how much of the time that doesn't work out, and how difficult it is to, for people to trade or whatever. And it's beautiful to be able to be in the Richard Hart ecosystem, to understand how to do crypto correctly, where you're coming in with a longer time horizon. And I think it speaks to how you're talking about risk. That plays a role in everything that you do in crypto. You see it with the Pulsechain and the Pulsechain sacrifice, where people went too big and now frankly they're hurting. Or you saw with Hedron, I anticipated, like many people on Twitter and different social media platforms, going into the HSI auctions, we'd see a run on price, and we just didn't. And so I think that, to add to what you're saying, I think it's incredibly important to have, when you're taking into account risk, you're also taking into account time horizons and what your goals are. And from my personal experience, if your time horizons are short, then crypto probably isn't your friend. And that's also one of the hardest things about crypto, is like, if you go on social media or you go to Google or you're trying to figure out, like, how do I get involved in crypto? What do I do? Well, 90 to 95% of the information are these idiots that are going to tell you to try to trade the most volatile asset in the history of the world, and that somehow you're going to make money this way. They send you to the meat grinder and you lose all your money. And so it's really cool that we could be putting out content like this to try to educate people to understand risk profiles and how to approach things the right mindset. So this has been excellent. You guys that are on stream, we're going to jump off here in just a few minutes. If you have any questions, post them in the comments below so that we can address those here. We'd love to hear from those of you that have commented so far.
Absolutely.
Feel free to post any questions. Maxim, we didn't get a probability out of you for Hedron. We'd love to get that.
Oh, that's right. we kept going.
Yeah, I would say, I hate to say this. Let's see. I feel
Give a range.
60% chance that Hedron, especially from these levels in 2 years, is looking like a good investment.
That's actually,
But
I
still,
like that,
it's
though.
still ambiguous. But I think it's a better chance than not. It's not a 40% chance of 10x returns. I think it's a 60% chance over a relatively long time horizon that it will come out the other end. But I think 60% chance is kind of low. 40% chance it may not. If I had to try to put numbers on it, I would do that, and I that would be my best answer right now.
Well, I love it because you're being very, very conservative with yourself and being true to yourself on this. So this is awesome. I have a real quick question. Any other projects you're looking at besides in the RH ecosystem that are doing? I see you do a lot of content on Hedron Icosa. That's why I was wondering if there's any other ones that you got on the radar or that you've played around with a little bit that you've been.
Yeah, so I'm really open to other things. I'm pretty picky. And so, and I really, if I'm looking into something, I probably will share. If I'm looking at it seriously, I think there are some other projects coming up that I'm expecting I might be actually very interested in. I don't know that I want to talk really much about them right now.
Sure.
And
In fact,
I kind of like,
let's take that just a slightly different place. You see these idiots on social media that are like, here's my 50 crypto tokens. And to me, I'm like, you just don't know enough. If you're saying there's 50 good ones, it's like a relationship and dating, in my opinion. Like, at least when I was dating to find my wife, I dated broadly and casually. And then once I found the right women to bet on, then I would go heavy in those places because I knew them and I felt good about the risk reward upside. If you're saying, well, here's 50, in my opinion, you're an idiot. You haven't done enough research to be able to figure out probably more like 5 or 10-ish is maybe a rough better number. You tell me, what's your thoughts in regards to like, what is a good portfolio? Like maybe a number of tokens. I don't know, something like that.
That's good.
That sounds like wisdom to me. Because one of the leverages you can possibly have is understanding what you're actually investing in. Like for me, I want to be able to focus on it, and I want to be able to maximize the opportunity that's there in my life in general. I'd rather do a few things well than many things poorly. And I feel like it's oftentimes you get to pick between the two. And even within crypto, which is one of the things I want to do well, I've decided crypto's a game. I love it. I think for so many reasons, I like it, philosophy, and you can make money off of it. But even within crypto, I want to be there's thousands of these things. Like, which ones are the ones that I think are worth focusing on? Let me try to master these. And even within those good tokens, play that token better than the majority of people in that token. And it's really hard to do that if I'm following a large number of tokens. And and I kind of honestly follow I pay attention to my curiosity and my intuition a little bit. Like, I've just learned enough for me that if I'm naturally drawn in, I try to question why. But if I'm naturally drawn in, that's a good sign, because if it for whatever reason appeals to me naturally, then my ability to focus on it is higher as well, and my the effort and focus that it takes to do it well is going to come easier. In some tokens,
that's a good point.
Yeah, because you have a synergistic feeling about it. There's something about it that drew you to it, and so that's what it was for me. The Richard Heart ecosystem in a whole, especially starting with Hex and Pulsechain. Yeah, that's a very good point. Where if I'm researching a bunch of random shit coins, it's a little bit harder for me to go deep on those.
Exactly.
Do you, in fact, and I don't want to put you on the spot, so if you just want, feel free to just say no. But how many? Do you mind if we ask like roughly how many projects you're interested in right now? Like, once again, it doesn't need to be perfect, but is it 5? Is it 10? Like, give the viewers an idea of somebody that's experienced. Like, what does that look like?
For what it's worth, I've been in crypto since 2015, if that's long or not. But I probably have, like, I'm holding probably 25 different tokens. But of those tokens, there's not that many I'm really focusing on. And some of them are airdrops. Like I have the Uni token, the Uniswap token. I have Pulse Bitcoin, but am I really spending tons of time? It's like the cost to get in was free. So like, let's just hold this token, partly because I don't want to pay attention to it is why I'm holding it. Most of them aren't worth a lot. But there are, I mean,
your focus is on what, maybe 5 projects, 10? I mean, what would you say?
So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Hex, Hedron, Icosa. I am in the EOS system, which is, I think, really speculative. And there are some tokens there that I think if the EOS system turns itself around, they have a chance of doing well. One of the, I don't know, I mean, if I'm naming names, I might as well name, but Box token, it's a decentralized exchange. I think they're doing a really good thing. I think that it's very hard for them because they're built, even though they're a great team, they're doing good stuff. They're built in an ecosystem that's having a really hard time. But I really like them. I'm actually on their board for their part of their board, and I want the very best for them, and I am invested relatively heavily in them. But I'm very cautious to even tell people stuff like that because it's so speculative. And like, I do want well for these people, and I'm very fine with the amount of tokens I hold, but it's hard for me. It is honestly, unfortunately, hard for me to draw a lot of attention to it at the same time, because it's hard for me to talk about it in a way that I feel is really productive.
Sure.
And it's
the one you're most unsure about, but maybe it could have obviously in the most upside potential too if it takes off.
I think I see it as even more risky than Hedron and Icosa in my mind. But it's a lot like Hedron and Icosa in that I like what they're trying to do. And I was in EOS from, before it even launched. And so I've been in that system, and I was kind of like, I was there, and so it's come forward with me. And so I'm spending time on that. There's a reason why I don't talk about it a lot either, just because I'm trying to, I want to do well for the people around me, and I don't know if it's in their best interest to get distracted. Exactly what we're talking about. Sure. I'm trying to talk very specifically and conservatively about the tokens I'm talking about, and I don't know. But
all in on Box now, me and Corey.
There you go.
Just kidding.
I actually let's Bitcoin. That's one of my other speculative plays. I'm involved in that, and I'm enjoying the mining, because I feel like in crypto, one of the 2 most important things is you got to have narrative, and you have to have a good community. And the Pulse Bitcoin community does have that. It's a branch off of the Hex ecosystem. You know what it reminds me of? Have you ever heard of the PayPal mafia?
No.
This is where when they broke up on PayPal, all the guys who worked at PayPal originally went off and created their own little entrepreneur journeys and were successful. And I feel like we're experiencing a little bit of that in the Hex community, a little bit of the PayPal mafia stuff. It's look at the PayPal mafia. It's a very interesting story with the roots of Elon. So
yeah, that's
cool.
Good. I'll let you guys. So I've got to jump off. I'll let you guys wrap up the meeting, and then Corey, you can just end it when you guys are done. Quick question, Nathan. I thought that was a really good one. Where to get started? In my opinion, you're in the right place, man. Like, consuming content like this, I think, especially people that are talking about the Richard Hart ecosystem, I think that's a relatively safe way, or safer way, as far as risk profiles are concerned, for someone to get in and understand the right tenets of crypto. We have our own group that we operate that's going really well. If you want more specific handholding, feel free to send me or Corey a message. We'd love to chat with you to see if it's a good fit. It's not for everybody, but we'd be happy to dive in there. And otherwise, I'm going to jump off, you guys. It's great to have you on, Maxim. Appreciate your time.
We'll see you, Dane. We'll be winding it down.
All right, cool.
Thanks, Dane.
Cool, man. Let's take a couple questions here, guys. We want to wind it down, so please submit your questions. Will the Pulsechain launch cause a change in your probability assessment for gain or loss? I'm going to answer my question.
Yeah.
I'll answer this first. To me, if Pulsechain were to never launch, it would damper the success in a lot of the Richard Hart ecosystem projects, being Hex, Hedron, Icosa, Pulse Bitcoin, and obviously a lot of the sacrifices that were that took place. So it would. I still feel like maybe Hex could have a future. It depends also why Pulsechain didn't launch. If it was because maybe the SEC came in, that would change the variables, or is it just because Richard Hart decided not to launch it? We don't. So depending the reasoning too. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too, Max.
Yeah, I feel like that was a really good answer. I feel similarly. I feel that if Pulsechain wouldn't launch, if it doesn't launch, it's hard for me to see that as a positive. I don't, but like you said, it depends on the reasoning why. So just speaking, not knowing the specifics of it, I wouldn't think that's a good thing. Yeah, I think you know, it's promoted. It's something that, you know, we're expecting to have happen. People have sacrificed for it. It's potentially helping Hex itself with lower transaction fees, which I think are something that is, you know, not helping Hex. The high transaction costs, ending long stakes isn't inexpensive, and this could address that issue. Aside from many other things that I think Pulse and PulseX are going to help with potentially. Yeah, I think it gives authenticity, if nothing else, too. And I think it has a potential. Just the fact that it gets launched, and if it works well, it gives more attention. And, you know, the Richard Hart community, Richard Hart himself is actually providing value, and I think the attention alone to our community when Pulsechain launches, if it launches, is really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a win. I have no doubt in my heart, I guess, and you call it faith, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what I believe and what I know to believe. It's kind of the same reason why people have. You can say, why do you believe in God? Just because you know He's there. What I know He's there, right? That's just me though, and I have no doubt for me that RH will be launching Pulsechain. These things take a lot of time, guys. I mean, I think it was like Cardano took 3 years. Hex was a 2-year project. Other layer ones took 2 or 3 years to create. I mean, this is nothing easy. And whilst in the midst of a bear market, and then obviously he decided to change the code, you know, halfway through, switching over to the Ethereum fork, which for me was bullish. I know there's mixed sentiment in the community about it. So it's just, you know, I have faith. I have no doubt it's coming. It's down the road. It's on the horizon. I think V3, we will see that within the next month or two. And that's just me. So,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think just like always, there's a chance that it doesn't come out for one reason or another. But I put the percentage low. I think Richard Hart, looking to Richard Hart's past, like he's been, I mean, I would say exceptionally like he's been very good at his ability to determine when things should come out and why, and played the markets really well, so well that I almost can't believe it. Honestly, it almost feels like he's getting lucky. But I want to be very humble and careful to say that just most people that are predicting things so far out in the future against trends have so rarely been correct so often. I'm really going to be curious if his call for Bitcoin 11K and pray comes right. I honestly cannot see it as anything. Like, I think it's educated luck if he's right. He talks about it so confidently. I don't know how you can know that. But I think he should get the credit, like as much credit as he's due for it. I think the fact that things have, you know, so many pundits had said that with relatively good histories were relatively confident that 20K was going to be very hard for Bitcoin to go lower. And Richard Hart was from the very beginning saying we're going below 20K, guys. And that is clearly true. Whether or not we hit 11K will be seen. And it seems more possible than ever right now with what we have going on. It's like, wow, this guy called this so far out.
And he's called like so many other different things that's happened in the crypto sphere, right?
Yes.
It's almost like he's Crystal Nostradamus.
He's done he's done such a good job. Like Richard Hart to me is a very intelligent person, but he's a special kind because he has shown himself, in my opinion, street smart. Like launching Hex in a bear market, like there wasn't, in my opinion, many tokens that were intentional about launching in a bear market. I think Richard Hart was. He saw that as an opportunity. It felt like to me, and it worked. It helped when the bull market came. It made Hex, show so much more positive because it launched in extreme fear, and the fact that he seems to be aware of things like that ahead of even the very intelligent other people creating tokens makes me think there's reason to give him some credit for whatever he's doing right now. It's always hard when you don't know what the explanation is exactly.
Yep.
Because that's what it's hard for, like it kind of comes back to, I'm trusting a person with a good history without knowing the reasoning why. I can't actually talk to the reasoning without, I'm just guessing. But overall, yeah, I think it's going to be what it is. I'm sacked. I'm waiting.
Right.
The Hex, the Richard Hart ecosystem has had, in my opinion, so much going on in the bear market. We've had so many tokens launch in a bear market and draw attention to our system and keep the excitement going and a reason to pay attention and be here. I don't know how long it can continue. I don't know how long the bear market's going to be, but I'm pretty impressed. It speaks well to our community, and it honestly speaks well to Richard Hart and Hex that he's created something that draws attention in, that gives confidence to launch in times like this. And those are all, like, in my opinion, those are really good signs.
Absolutely. I think it's been the funnest bear market ever. I've
Yeah.
had such a blast with all the different protocols coming out, and just the deep learning and diving into the whole Richard Hart ecosystem has been amazing for me during this bear market. Because I came into crypto on the last bull market, bought the top with how we were talking earlier, 50 different coins, watching, crypto banter and BitBoy and all that, my typical. And that's the way I learned, right? And then I learned the hard way, got wrecked, and then found Richard Hart. And I was like, whoa, okay. So it's just been absolutely amazing. All right, a couple more questions here. I've been hearing 100,000 hex should be the minimum you stake. Do you feel that's accurate?
I think it depends. You can answer if you want, Corey.
Now, yeah. Well, I was just going to say, it does depend. You're probably going off, like, we don't know what Ethereum gas fees are going to be in, 2 years, 5 years, 15 years. We don't know the answer to that. Ethereum's trying to get their act together. They're saying that they're going to have sharding and everything else that's going to help this problem.
Yep.
Obviously on Pulsechain, it doesn't matter. When Pulsechain launches, you could probably stake 1,000 hex, and your unstaked fees are going to be cheap. Richard said if it ever became expensive on Pulsechain, he'd fork it again. And so it's hard to say, man. If you're talking about wealth, we don't know the answer to that. You do what you're comfortable with. You do the amount that you're capable of putting in. 100,000 hex is a good number. I like that number. I would still, it's what you're comfortable with. Are you able to DCA, and I'll let you take it from there, Maxim.
Yeah. So some things that I would be thinking about are exactly what you mentioned. The shorter your stake length, the less expensive.
True.
All other things being equal, like if the Ethereum price and gas prices are the same, the shorter your length, the less expensive it will be to end it. It's the multi-year and beyond hex stakes that have a chance of really expensive end stake fees. The question also is, it's very speculative, but what's the price of hex going to be? So I think for longer stakes, for me also, like 100,000 hex isn't a bad number. Like just knowing this is a speculative question, I don't know what the hex price is going to be. I don't know what the Ethereum transaction costs are going to be years in the future, but it does seem like if you're going over 3 years or around that length, bigger stakes are generally you're gonna have a better chance of not losing your whole value when you unstake. Of course, you can I forgot what it's called. You can end your stake without good accounting is what it's called. You can good accounting it. I don't think that's necessarily really expensive. But yeah, I think there is wisdom in considering longer stakes being bigger for those reasons. But and I think it's a good reason that people are promoting like care and thought towards that end. And that's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to Pulse, hopefully addressing that and making it less of an issue.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I hope that answered the question there. Pulsechain will solve that problem. So, I got a cough. Hold on. All right, guys. Well, we'll wind it down. Tell everybody, the viewers, where they can find you. Why I'm choking.
Maxim Broadcast is my Twitter. Won't Settle Media is my. Sorry, I did that backwards. Won't Settle Media is my Twitter. Maxim Broadcast is my YouTube channel.
All right, great. Thank you, guys. Jeez, my throat started, my allergy started acting up. But guys, like and subscribe. Crypto Millionaires here with Corey Geary. I appreciate everyone coming on today. We'll be bringing on more guests like this. Man, you dropped some massive alpha today. That was like just
Thanks,
I love your mindset, the way you look at crypto. And I feel like if we had more people with that approach, that it'd be a better world in the crypto space.
I feel like that too. Like, yeah, we need people that have been in it long enough to have less fear in this game, and you can have a confidence in a relatively volatile environment. It's crazy, but you can. But yeah, thank you.
So great. Well, thank you, guys. We'll wind it down. Keep following us, guys, every Friday, 8 a.m. Arizona time, which is MST time right now. And man, we would love to have you back on some other time to be spit more alpha, man. This is just an hour and a half wasn't enough.
Yeah, I love it when the time flies.
It was
a good
man.
sign.
All right, guys. You guys have a good rest of your day and invest wisely.
See you guys.